Welcome viewers. In this lecture, we will be discussing about how to manage organizational change. I will discuss about types and forms of organizational change, and to start with, the learning objective is define what is organizational change, what is planned change, what are targets, forces and resistance to change, and various types of change like planned change, evolutionary and revolutionary change. What is the role of change agents? We will also discuss about Levin's change process and understand intervention strategies to help organizations achieve desired future state. An effective organization is not a stable solution to achieve, but it is a developmental process to keep the organizations active. Organizations have been changing very rapidly, and we need to look at the following characteristics what makes an organization to change very often: flexibility in the structure, innovation, rapid responsiveness to the environment, and adhocratic structure. So, to understand what is change, it is a process by which organizations move from their present state of affairs to a desired future state in order to be more effective. So, goal is to improve the ways of using resources and capabilities in order to increase an organization's ability to create value. There are targets of change include improving effectiveness at four different levels like human resources, functional resources, technology and organizational capabilities. Typical kind of change efforts directed at human resources include investment in training and development, socializing employees into the organization's culture, changing organizational norms and values to motivate a multicultural and diverse workforce. They can work together cohesively without any conflict, and the organization would gain from the collective competence of individuals working in that organization. A diverse workforce will always be a creative workforce. Promotion and reward systems are intact. People are given due recognition based on their performance. Changing the composition of top management team with well placed representation from people having diverse background, so which can also give the management wider thought to take up the organization, to think widely about how the organization develop its brand image, can always respond to the changing business environment. Targets of change can be functional resources, like change efforts directed at functional resources by transferring resources to the functions where most value can be created in response to environmental change. An organization can improve the value that its functions create by changing the structure, culture, and technology. Change efforts, which are directed at technological capabilities, are intended to give an organization capability to change itself in order to exploit market opportunities. Technological capabilities are core competence. There are some more like targets of change. Change efforts directed at organizational capabilities alter organization's culture and structure, thereby permitting organizations to harness its human and functional resource to exploit technological opportunities. To understand the forces of change, the identification of opportunities upon which management wants to capitalize. It could be in anticipation of or in reaction to a problem which an organization faces due to several internal external factors present in the business environment. For example, change in objectives, expansion of business, scarcity of labor, unionization, changing technology, etc. The competitive forces organizations must make change to attempt to match or exceed its competitors on at least one of the following dimensions, that is efficiency, quality, innovation. And economic, political and global forces affect organizations by forcing them to change how and where they can produce goods and services. There is a need to change organizational structure to allow expansion in foreign market, adapt to a variety of national culture, help expatriates adapt to the culture, values of where they are located. Demographic and social factors can also be the forces of change in composition of workforce, and increasing diversity of employees has presented many challenges for organizations. Increased need to manage diversity, ethical forces, government, political and social demands for more responsible corporate behavior, creation of ethics officers position, encourage employees to report unethical behavior. Now let us understand about the resistance to change. One of the major reasons of some organizations inability to change is organizational inertia, the forces which are resisting to change that maintains the status quo. Resistance to change lowers an organization's effectiveness and reduces its chances of survival. Organizational level resistance to change stems from the issues of power and conflict. When change occurs, power struggles and conflicts arise, and which leads to resistance. Differences in functional orientation, the mechanistic and organic structure. There is also group level resistance to change, which is stemming from the group's norms, group's cohesiveness, group think or decision making, escalation of commitment. There are a group of people who would say yes, majority of people would support. So, these are issues, a matter of resistance to organizational change. Individual level, the factors of resistance to change can stem from uncertainty and insecurity, selective perception and retention, and it is a habit of an individual. So, to summarize, like forces of change, competitive forces, economic forces, political forces, global forces, demographic forces, social factors and ethical forces, these are some forces of change. Resistance to change, organizational level resistance is because of the structure and culture and strategy. Functional level, the resistance can come from differences in subunit orientation, power and conflict. The group level resistance arises from the group's norms, cohesiveness, the intensity of or the closeness of the group members, or group think, how the groups think together. The individual level resistance comes from cognitive biases, the biases of an individual or the biases which individuals hold. Then uncertainty and insecurity, which is there prevalent at the individual level. Selective perception, how you perceive about a topic, what is your understanding about a particular subject, and retention, then it is a habit. So, there are different types of changes in organizations. One is called planned change, structural change. Planned change is the change in an organization that are planned or purposeful, where the manager plans how the change output will be, what steps to be followed in order to get the desired output, with an objective to keep the organizations current and viable. But however, in case of planned change, there are sequential steps of actions which are planned by the manager, and manager wishes to have control over the output. But in reality, this does not happen because there are resisting factors which may intervene in the process of attainment of final results. Structural change is a technique that an individual that have an impact on the structural system of the organization, which includes changing authority patterns, access to information, allocation of rewards, technology and the like. Broadly, if you see, there are two broad categories of change. One is evolutionary change and revolutionary change. Evolutionary is gradual, incremental and narrowly focused. Revolutionary change is sudden, drastic and is broadly focused. Development in evolutionary change. So, if you see, the socio-technical systems theory states that importance of changing role and task or technical relationship is to increase organizational effectiveness. Managers must fit or jointly optimize the working of an organization's technical and social systems, that is how people work or with the changing technology or culture to promote effectiveness. Managers need to make changes in the technical system slowly to allow group norms and cohesiveness are not disrupted. For example, in the new workplace, new technologies are in place. So, how this technology can be efficiently adapted to the new workplace is understand to work with the new technology. The system will work effectively when the social system like coordination among employees and how they adapt to the new technology will go hand in hand. Development in evolutionary change, total quality management, quality circles are all examples. TQM is an ongoing and consistent effort by all of an organization's functions to find new ways to improve the quality of organization's goods and services. Quality Circle is a group of workers who meet regularly to discuss the way work is being performed in order to find new ways to increase organizational performance. Changing cross functional relationship is very important to total quality management. Flexible work or flexible workers. Employees who have acquired and developed the skill to perform any of the tasks necessary for assembling a range of finished goods. Compensation frequently tied to the number of different tasks that a person can perform. Workers can substitute for one another. There are flexible work teams like a group of workers who assume responsibility for performing all the operations necessary for completing a specified stage in the manufacturing process. Team members jointly assess tasks and transfer workers from one task to another. Manager's role is to facilitate the team's activities. So, the use of flexible work teams to assemble cars. Automobiles manufacturer, several different component manufacturers who work in close coordination with each other, like one team will be working for brake systems and another team will be working for exhaust system component, then engine component, and another team is working for the transmission work. All of them work in coordination with each other. All these work teams help in assembly of car. So, there are 1000 different component manufacturers who join together for completion of a task, that is assembly of car. Re-engineering is another example. Managers redesign how tasks are bundled into roles and functions to improve organizational effectiveness. Instead of focusing on an organization's functions, managers of a re-engineered organization focus on business processes. Companies re-engineer the work people do. Then we will discuss on the business process, any activity that cuts across the functional boundaries and which is vital to the quick delivery of products and services or that promotes high quality or low cost. This forces managers to no longer focus on function in isolation. Deliberately ignores the existing arrangement of tasks, roles and work activities. Guidelines for performing re-engineering successfully includes organize around outcomes not tasks and have those who the output of the process perform the process, decentralize decision making to the point where the decision is being made. How to improve integration in the functional structure to create materials management function. The CEO subordinates like in the manufacturing, purchasing, production control, distribution and marketing. But if you want to improve the integration in the functional structure, the CEO will be directly overlooking at the work of manufacturers, materials management and marketing division. In the materials management section, there is purchase, then production control and distribution. So, if you look at the materials management section, there is purchasing and distribution and production control. Developments in revolutionary change E-engineering refers to companies' attempt to use information systems to improve their performance, restructuring organizations like changing task and authority relationship, redesigning organizational structure and culture to improve organizational effectiveness, downsizing to streamline the organization's hierarchy and laying off managers and working to reduce the bureaucratic cost. Some more developments in the revolutionary change is innovation, the process by which organizations use their skill sets and resources to create new technology, develop new goods and services, better respond to the needs of the customers, one of the most difficult instruments to manage change. Organizational initiator or change agents, they are also very important in managing the change process. Organizational initiators or change agents are those in power and those who wish either to replace or constrain those in power, senior executives, managers of major units within the organization, internal staff development specialists and powerful lower level employees. We discuss about the process of implementation of change. It is a process of bringing about change. Change process includes unfreezing the status quo, moving to a new state and refreezing the change to make it permanent. The concept is given by Kurt Lewin in 1950s, known as the three-step process model of change. Implementation tactics is paralleling the change process. In implementation stage is the decision to which tactics should be used to install and the planned change. One is intervention, participation, persuasion and edit. The outcome of this process could be positive, negative, temporary or permanent. Levin's force field theory of change argues that two sets of opposing forces are prevalent within an organization which determines how change will take place. Forces of change and forces making organizations resistant to change. When forces for and against change are equal, the organization is in a state of inertia. It cannot transform. So, to change an organization, managers must increase the forces for change and decrease forces of resisting change. So, Levin's three-step model of change talks about unfreezing the organization from its present state, make the desired type of change and then refreeze the organization in a new desired state. So, there are restraining forces, constraining forces, resistance to change, force for change. So, in this case we have discussed about level of performance and on the other axis there is time. So, what we have discussed so far, we discussed about what is change, we discussed about various factors of resistance to change, the forces of change, competitive forces, then we discussed about targets of change. We have also highlighted on the various types of changes like planned change, structural change, broad categories of evolutionary and revolutionary change with some examples and how evolutionary change happens and some examples of revolutionary changes, and we discussed about re-engineering, total quality management. Further, we have discussed about restructuring, downsizing and innovation. And lastly, we discussed about the process model of change, that is Levin's three-step process of change. Thank you.